Chapter 19, Comfort and Complications. After his shower, Nick made his way back to his locker, a soft towel wrapped loosely around his torso, still damp from the lingering steam. The corridor air, cooler and drier than before, drifted across his skin like a whisper. Refreshing after the weight and heat of his workout. Each step felt lighter now, his muscles humming with the clean ache of effort well spent. As he reached his locker, he slid his index finger over the scanner with muscle memory precision. A soft beep responded, followed by the smooth, near-silent click of the magnetic lock disengaging. The door slid open, revealing the pristine interior once more. Efficient, minimal, and comfortingly predictable. Inside, his post-training ritual unfolded with quiet familiarity. He placed the empty water bottle into the automated refill port, which hissed softly as it accepted the container. A faint blue light blinked on, and a low whir began as the wall unit drew from its hidden reservoir, refilling the bottle with chilled, citrus-flavoured, electrolyte-infused water. It would be waiting for him later, perfectly recharged, just like he was. Nick reached for his clothes, methodically slipping into a clean pair of jeans. They were a perfect fit, not too tight, not too loose, and bore the faintest scuffing at the knees, a mark of real life that made them feel worn in without being worn out. Next came a plain black t-shirt, soft cotton, clinging gently to his frame. There was something satisfying about the simplicity. No logos, no flash, just understated strength. Functional. Clean. Then, the jacket. His fingers brushed over it, almost reverently, before lifting it free from the locker hook. Faded grey, subtly creased at the elbows, with the familiar texture of fleece lining that had softened over time. He shrugged into it, rolling his shoulders as it settled into place. The warmth bloomed across his back instantly, not just from the material, but from memory. It had been a gift from his mum, one of those spontaneous moments where practicality met affection. He remembered the day she handed it to him, winter sun glinting through the kitchen window, her hair tied back, laughing as he pulled it on, and claimed it was too soft to be manly. She'd ruffled his hair and told him that being warm didn't make you weak. Now, every time he wore it, it was like walking with a part of her. He paused for a moment, hands in his pockets, eyes drifting toward the mirror on the far wall of the changing room. The boy reflected back at him, looked more centered than he had that morning. Worn, yes, but in the way metal gets worn after battle, not broken. His hair was damp and tousled, his jaw set with quiet resolve. Stuffing his towel back into the laundry chute built into the locker wall, he closed the door with a soft click and made his way back down the corridor. He had no destination in mind just yet, but whatever the day held, he was ready to meet it. After getting changed, Nick made his way upstairs and stepped out into the back garden, hoping the crisp morning air would help clear his mind. The world outside was quiet in that special way only early hours could deliver. Peaceful, unhurried, as if time itself had chosen to linger. The scent of dew still lingered on the air, mingling with the subtle perfume of the hedgerows, flower beds, and well-pruned topiary that framed the grounds. The breeze was light, cool against his skin, and carried with it the earthy freshness of damp soil and early blossom. Leaves rustled overhead in soft conversation, while the gentle trickle of the pond's central fountain echoed across the garden, steady, deliberate, like the heartbeat of the manor itself. His eyes scanned the space, And there she was. Anne sat alone on one of the carved wooden benches near the pond, its back curved with age and care. Her green jacket contrasted softly against the surrounding flora, and she sat with one leg tucked under her, her gaze fixed on the water's subtle ripples. She looked at ease from a distance, but up close, Nick could see the slight furrow in her brow, the distant look in her eyes, the kind of expression people wore when they were thinking about things too complicated to put into words. The knot in his stomach twisted again. He hadn't wanted to upset her. He'd just been trying to understand, to connect. Drawing a quiet breath, he walked over and eased himself down at the opposite end of the bench, leaving a respectful space between them. He didn't want to crowd her, not yet. "Hey, Anne," he said gently, his voice careful but open. "Listen, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry if I brought up anything painful earlier. I didn't mean to step into something that personal. It's just, I was curious, and I didn't realise it was a sore spot." Anne didn't speak for a beat. She blinked once, slowly, still staring at the water. Then she snorted. A second later, she burst out laughing, full-on, unfiltered laughter, as real as it was sudden. She doubled over slightly, hand against her chest, then wiped a tear from the corner of her eye, her laughter subsiding into hiccuping giggles. Nick stared at her, bewildered. "Wait. What?" Anne finally looked over at him, her grin stretched wide across her face. "Oh, you should see the look on your face right now," she gasped. "You look like a rabbit caught in headlights, all sad and twitchy." Nick blinked, stunned. "You were messing with me?" "I was just winding you up, you absolute numpty," she grinned, nudging him with her elbow. "Honestly, it was too easy. But seriously, you're sweet for worrying. I appreciate it. Really." Nick shook his head, torn between relief and exasperation. "So, you're not upset?" "Nope," she said cheerfully. Then her tone softened as she added, "My real dad, he was never around, not in any meaningful way. Doesn't exist in my life, not really. Victor's the one who raised me, showed me how to be strong, how to stand up for myself. As far as I'm concerned, he's my real father." Nick let out a breath he hadn't realised he'd been holding. Her words, blunt, honest, but not bitter, offered more insight into who she was than anything she'd said before. There was no resentment in her voice, just clarity. Strength. "I guess I'm still adjusting to all this," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "You, your family, this entire setup, and your sense of humour, that's going to take some time." Anne smirked, leaning back on the bench with an air of mock superiority. "You'll catch on eventually. You're not the first to fall for one of my traps, and I guarantee you won't be the last." She tossed him a sidelong glance. "But I'll give you points for the apology. Very noble." Just then, James emerged from the staircase that led up from the underground gym, his footsteps light and his grin wide. A towel was draped around his neck, his damp hair spiked in all directions from the water, and his whole body radiated that unmistakable buzz of post-exercise adrenaline. "Man, I haven't had a swim that good in ages," he exclaimed, arms spread wide as though embracing the sky. "Seriously, that pool is unreal." "How was it?" Anne asked, raising an eyebrow, intrigued by his enthusiasm. James practically bounced as he spoke. "Honestly, it felt like diving into a tropical lagoon. Crystal clear water, no salty aftertaste, and none of the grime you get from public pools. Apollo even played ambient music and dimmed the lights just right. It felt more like a spa than a workout. Anne smiled. Apollo's setting the bar high for future gyms. We'll never be able to use public facilities again. That I really is pulling its weight, Nick added with a chuckle, shaking his head. Though it's weird sometimes. Like talking to a ghost that lives in the walls. Right on cue, Apollo's voice flowed into the garden with its smooth, melodic precision. While I may lack a physical presence, Mr. Adams, my omnipresence enables me to respond efficiently to the needs of all mansion occupants. Anne's amused expression faltered, shifting into something more thoughtful. She turned her gaze to the speakers, nestled discreetly among the ivy-draped archways. Her brow creased. Wait, if you're everywhere, does that mean there are cameras in the bedrooms and bathrooms? Correct, Miss Shang, Apollo replied without hesitation. However, these areas are designated privacy zones. In accordance with the Data Privacy Recordings Act of 2027-80, all automated visual and audio sensors deactivate during private activities. No recordings are stored or transmitted while guests are in states that require privacy. A breeze stirred the garden, rustling leaves and carrying with it the scent of wild lavender. Nick watched Anne as she digested the response, her lips pressing into a thin line. A tension lingered in her posture, shoulders tight, arms folded across her chest. Well, that's good to know, she said after a moment. Still feels a bit creepy, though. Apollo's tone shifted slightly, adopting a firmer resonance. Nonetheless, I must remind all residents that unlawful actions within the mansion will be recorded where permissible. This includes, but is not limited to, property damage, theft, arson, physical assault, or attempts to breach mansion security protocols. All such data is admissible in court, should the need arise. Nick let out a snort, offering a crooked grin. We'll be sure to behave then. Wouldn't want to end up on your naughty list. Suddenly, Nick's phone buzzed to life, its subtle vibration slicing through the light-hearted atmosphere like a ripple on still water. The ringtone, an upbeat synth melody he'd forgotten he'd set, felt strangely out of place in the serenity of the garden. He glanced at the screen. Connor Jenkins. A flash of surprise crossed his face, followed by a grin that tugged at the edges of his lips. His heart lifted a notch. Excuse me a sec, he said to Anne and James, rising from the bench. He wandered a few steps away, stopping beside an ornate cast-iron table sculpted to resemble a cloaked horseman mid-gallop. It was the kind of eccentric furnishing only someone like William Stenhouse would own. Half art piece, half conversation starter. With a tap, Nick answered the call and switched to video mode. His screen lit up with the unmistakable sight of Connor's animated face. Dishevelled blue hair, familiar grin, slightly crooked nose, and that mischievous glint in his eye that meant something unpredictable was coming. Hey there, Connor, Nick greeted, voice brightening. Glad to see you're still breathing, Nick. Connor shot back, with mock concern, adjusting his camera angle. Honestly, between Hoover-wielding housekeepers and the city's crime rate, I wasn't sure. Nick chuckled. Barely made it. Got ambushed by early morning yoga and existential conversations. Well, lucky for you, Connor replied, shifting to a more serious tone. I've got news. Remember I said yesterday I needed to talk to my parents about something important? Nick nodded, leaning in, intrigue tightening his brow. Yeah, what happened? Connor leaned forward dramatically until his forehead nearly bumped the lens. I told them about your situation, that you're living in London now, things have been rough, and that you could really use your best mate nearby. So I asked if I could come live with you. Nick's eyebrows shot up. And? They said yes, Connor beamed, triumph written all over his face. Nick blinked, stunned. For a few seconds, he just stared, caught between disbelief and delight. Wait, seriously? You're coming to London? Connor gave an exaggerated nod. Already packed, mate. I'll be catching the train soon. Should be at King's Cross just before noon. The grin on Nick's face faltered. Just a fraction. Excitement collided with a pang of worry. You know it's not exactly safe here, right? He said quietly, voice edged with caution. Just because I'm in a mansion doesn't mean I'm out of danger. The stuff I'm involved in, it's real, it's dangerous. But Connor just scoffed and puffed up his chest like a superhero in a bargain bin costume. Pfft. I know Aikido, remember? If any tosser tries anything, I'll flatten them. Nick let out a short laugh, the tension easing. His mind flashed to a particular day outside Jenkins' bakery. Sunny, crowded, the air thick with cinnamon and vanilla. Like that bloke who tried to nick your mum's cupcakes. Nick grinned. I swear his shoulders still clicking. Exactly, Connor declared proudly, striking a pose. One swift move and boom, cupcakes defended, dignity restored, honour intact. Nick shook his head, the weight on his shoulders momentarily forgotten. You're a lunatic. Maybe, Connor said, smirking, but I'm your lunatic, and I'll be there soon. Nick stared at the screen for a moment longer, taking in the familiar face, so full of life and loyalty, and felt something tighten in his chest. Amidst the danger, the loss, and the impossible duality of his life, this moment was a beacon, a steady hand in the storm. All right, he said, voice softening. I'll meet you at the station. Looking forward to it. Don't die before I get there, yeah? Connor threw up a 2-finger salute and a thumbs up before the call disconnected. The screen went black. Nick slid the phone into his pocket, his grin lingering. The sky above was still the same soft morning blue. The air still cool with dew. But something had shifted. With Connor coming to London, the city felt a little less cold, a little less lonely. Nick made his way back to the bench, where Anne and James were still seated, the morning sun casting playful shadows of leaves across their faces, like a moving canvas of gold and green. A light breeze tugged at Anne's hair, and James had kicked off his trainers. His feet stretched lazily into the grass. James looked up first, brow raised in curiosity. Who was that? He asked, tone casual, but interest clearly piqued. Nick eased back onto the bench, his expression warm, touched by a low flicker of joy. An old friend of mine. His name's Connor. He's coming to stay with us. Wait, really? Anne perked up, shifting slightly. The news sparked something bright behind her eyes. Excitement? Maybe curiosity. That's a surprise. Want us to come with you? We could help carry bags or make a dramatic welcome sign. Nick laughed, shaking his head gently. Thanks, but I think I'll go alone. I want it to be a surprise when I bring him back and introduce him to everyone properly. Anne gave a small nod of understanding, reading the nuance beneath his words. Got it. It's a friend thing. She stood, brushing her hands down the sides of her shorts, and took in the garden around her with a long, contented breath. The sun dappled across the gravel path behind her like spilled honey. I think I'll explore a bit more out here. There's something about this place. Her gaze drifted across the rose-lined hedges and the winding stone paths. Makes you want to slow down and wander. Suit yourself, James yawned, stretching his arms above his head with a satisfied groan. I'm heading back in. Knowing May, she's probably got a task list longer than a shopping receipt waiting for me. And if not, I'm staking a claim on the big couch and binge-watching old-school cartoons until my brain melts. Anne chuckled, shaking her head. Sounds like a noble quest. Take care, both of you. With a light wave and a bounce in her step, she wandered off toward a tree-covered trail, disappearing behind a row of tall hedges that whispered in the wind. Nick and James turned toward the house. The stone patio gave way to the sleek, cool interior of the mansion, where the warmth of morning sunlight yielded to the polished calm of engineered climate control and understated opulence. Inside the kitchen, life was already in full swing. Bright vegetables of every hue, bell peppers, aubergines, bok choy, were spread across the island counter in a burst of colour. May stood at the centre of it all, her sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows, moving with the calm precision of someone who had long ago mastered the dance between blade and board. The rhythmic sound of chopping echoed like percussion beneath the simmering notes of garlic and 5 spice. Steam curled from a wok on the far hob, blending with the scent of sesame oil and something faintly citrus. Did you boys enjoy your workout? May asked without turning, her voice chipper but focused. If you're feeling peckish, help yourselves to a snack. Dinner's at 5 sharp. Nick inhaled deeply, closing his eyes for just a moment as the aroma enveloped him. Smells amazing. What's on the menu? May finally glanced over her shoulder, smiling with pride. A proper Chinese family dinner. Char siu pork, stir-fried greens, jasmine rice, mapo tofu, and a side of dumplings. Something light, something rich. Balance is everything. Smells like heaven, James said, already halfway to the fridge. He pulled out a chilled half-litre bottle of blackcurrant solar sips and called back, You might want to make that 5, May. May paused mid-chop. Her knife hovered above a spring onion. 5, she repeated, eyes narrowing slightly. There's only 4 of us. Nick stepped forward with a grin. I've invited a friend, Connor. He's from Biggleswade. He'll be arriving this afternoon. I'm just about to head to the station to meet him. May's brows lifted, then her face lit up with unrestrained warmth. Oh, that's wonderful. A new guest. She turned back to her prep, her movements gaining new energy. Another mouth to feed means another lucky person to taste my cooking. She switched out her knife for a cleaver, beginning to portion the pork with swift, confident strikes. The new rhythm was brisker now, animated by her excitement. Nick leaned against the edge of the counter, arms loosely folded. You're going to love him. But fair warning, he'll eat everything you make if you let him. He's got the appetite of a wolf. In that case, May replied with a mischievous smile, I'd better double the portions. As Nick made his way toward the mansion's front entrance, the echo of footsteps softened by thick carpet, and marble gave way to the hushed calm of the foyer. He was already reaching for the biometric door panel. when May's voice called after him, not bright and chipper this time, but low, steady, laced with concern. Be safe, and make sure to contact me if you run into any trouble. He paused mid-step and turned. May stood in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel, the scent of garlic and soy still lingering faintly around her. Her brow was slightly furrowed, her expression gentle but serious. In the glow of the mansion's filtered sunlight, she looked more like a guardian than a housekeeper. Someone who had seen enough of the world to know how quickly an ordinary day could turn sideways. Nick opened his mouth to reassure her, but then froze. A thought struck him, obvious in hindsight, but somehow it had completely slipped his mind. "Actually," he said, rubbing the back of his neck with a sheepish grimace, "I don't have your numbers. Or Anne's. Or James's." May blinked in mild surprise. "You don't?" she asked, already reaching for her phone. But before she could respond further, Apollo's voice drifted down from the ceiling speaker, clear, courteous, and ever precise. "I'm happy to assist, Mr. Adams. Since Ms. Shang, her daughter, and Mr. Hunter are all registered residents of the mansion. I have their contact information stored in the household database, sending them to your device now." A small vibration buzzed in Nick's pocket. He pulled out his phone and saw a new message displayed at the top of his screen. Apollo Mansion Sync. 3 contacts added. With a few taps, he saved them, each name bringing a sense of grounding. Anne Shang. James Hunter. May Shang. 3 people who mattered now. 3 people he needed to stay connected with. "Thanks, Apollo," he said, sliding the phone away. "Could you send them my number too? Just in case they ever need me?" "Of course, sir." The transfer is complete. A second later, a soft chime echoed from May's phone. She glanced at the screen and gave a small nod, a quiet smile forming. "Well, that's sorted. Very grown up of you, Nick." He gave a half laugh, half shrug, lingering in the moment, but her smile didn't quite chase away the tension in her eyes. "Still," she added, stepping forward, her voice dropping slightly, "be careful out there, Nick. London's not the same city it was a few decades ago. You know that better than most." Nick rested his hand on the door handle, offering a wry smile. "I'm just picking up a friend." "What's the worst that could happen?" May didn't laugh. Instead, she held his gaze for a beat longer than necessary, then nodded, allowing him to go. But the warning lingered unspoken in the space between them. As Nick stepped outside, a crisp breeze greeted him. The golden shimmer of mid-morning sunlight bathed the polished stone path ahead, making it gleam like glass. The air was alive with distant noise, birds in the trees overhead, the low thrum of traffic from the city's arteries, and the faint, solemn chime of a church bell echoing far beyond the estate walls. It was London as he'd come to know it, ancient and modern, soft and sharp, beautiful and unpredictable. With his phone tucked safely in his jacket and the growing anticipation of seeing Connor again swelling inside him, Nick descended the steps of the mansion with purpose. The gravel crunched beneath his boots, and each step felt lighter than the last.